This is a video that I've called Act Faithfully. The world is not content to leave Christians alone. If they can't persuade us to join them in what they're doing, they're going to keep trying to keep us from practicing our faith. We sure have seen this recently. And this particular article was written in 2015. But today, that comment is even more apparent. This should not matter to the world, but it does. Our actions shine the light of Christ and expose their darkness. We have just finished Thanksgiving time this year, 2018, and our hearts should still be raised to the Lord in thanksgiving. Of course, we should give God our thanks all year long. In the Bible, Daniel faced a similar experience of others trying to prevent him from praising God. But he was not fazed. He continued to worship and give thanks to God and pray, even if it meant opposition and death. Daniel had the habit of praying every day. It's a great habit that we should all aspire to. However, this habit got Daniel into trouble. So Daniel shows the need to act faithfully, the title of this video, even when others oppose him or us. This one begins in Daniel 6, chapter 6, verses 6-10. Help understand kind of where this setting is, we need to point out that the Medes and the Persians were in control. This was after the Babylonians had exiled the Israelites. The exact date of these events in chapter 6 cannot be determined accurately, but probably they took place within 2 or 3 years of the transition from this Babylonian Empire and Nebuchadnezzar and his son. Darius the Mede emerged as the new king of the huge empire. The exact identity of Darius has long been debated. Many evangelist scholars agree that Darius the Mede is the same person as Cyrus the Persian. There's a lot of things about that don't ring true, however. We know that ancient rulers often had dual identities, dual titles, and leaders of two territories. But the strongest indication of dual identity is in the fact that Cyrus' father was Persian and his mother was Median. In addition, the statement in Daniel 6:28 about Daniel served in the reign of Darius and Cyrus. And they have kind of Aramaic conjunction. But even that, the reign of Cyrus and Persian probably are separate. Likely explains apparent confusion around the transition between Darius and Cyrus that added to the fact that maybe they're the same people. Now, there doesn't appear to be definite proof either way. However, it just adds to the mystery of the book of Daniel. I tend to believe they were two separate. There's some other instances that it's not appropriate for the purpose of this video. But Darius reorganized the political structure of his kingdom. He appointed 120 satraps to rule in the various provinces throughout the empire. They in turn were answerable to 3 presidents, commissioners, administrators. All of them are kind of interchangeable. The word is a Persian word that means chief. One of the 3 was Daniel, now likely over 80 years old at this point. We had these verses of the scripture, we see that Daniel has already gone through Nebuchadnezzar and other things. The fact that he was given a responsible position in the new government indicates that his reputation for integrity and dependability were well known, even to the Persians. Daniel quickly proved his ability to the satisfaction of the king, who decided to appoint him to a governing position above all others except himself. This decision provoked the jealousy of other presidents and satraps, so they sought to bring other grounds for destroying his influence with the king. They were unable to uncover any wrongdoing in Daniel, realized that their only hope for alienating him was his connection with the Jewish religion. They devised a plan that would flatter the king without calling attention to their plot to discredit Daniel. They approached the king with suggestion that proclaimed a law that anyone who petitioned any god or man for 30 days except the king would be cast in the lion's den. Daniel had already gone through a lot of things with Nebuchadnezzar and come out to those pretty well, but now he was facing a new group. Just like I started this video, there's always some to try to prevent us from doing what we wanted to do for the Lord. They urged the king to sign a decree which they had already prepared, unaware of the real intention of the decree the king had signed, with the knowledge that according to Persian and Median law, not even the king could revoke it once it was signed into law. When Daniel learned about the new law, he went to his house and prayed on his knees before an open window 3 days, as he had always done, fully aware of the consequences. He faced toward Jerusalem, and he prayed, perhaps influenced by Solomon's prayer in 1 Kings and the 2 Chronicles. Daniel made no attempt to hide his daily prayer routine from his enemies in government, even though he knew he would be disobeying the new law. Hiding his daily prayers would have been futile, because surely the conspirators would have caught him at something or else during the month. Also, hiding would have demonstrated he was afraid of the other government officials. Daniel stood alone. Daniel continued to pray 3 times every day and had a disciplined prayer life. Daniel could not look to the king for guidance and strength that he needed during the difficult time. Our prayers are usually interrupted, not by threats, but simply by the pressure of our schedules or by others. We all need to pray regularly. Daniel knew that only God could provide what he really needed. Moving along then into verses 13 through 16 in 6th chapter of Daniel, faithfulness to God often results in opposition. Daniel's enemies immediately informed the king that he had violated the decree, and he must suffer the consequences. Their reminder to the king that Daniel was one of the exiles from Judah may reveal that their hatred found roots in racial prejudice. The king was distressed and made every legal effort to deliver Daniel from his own foolish decree, the king's foolish decree, without success. Daniel indicated that he was innocent and had not committed a crime, but he refused to pray to Darius or to any other god. In spite of Darius's effort to save Daniel, he had to give the order to put Daniel in the lion's den. Sorrowfully, he ordered the sentence to be carried out after expressing a hope to Daniel that somehow Daniel's God might save him. The mouth of the pit was sealed with the seals of the king, and his lords, to prevent an illegal rescue, was standing guard. The king was unable to eat or sleep that night. Question may come at this point without an answer, but just think about it. What are some of the consequences of us being faithful to God in today's culture? Well, certainly, We don't have to face the threat of a lion's den. Lions roamed the countryside and forest in Mesopotamia, and people there feared them greatly, respected their power. Some kings hated lions for sport. Persians captured lions, keeping them in large parks where they fed and attended lions. Lions were also used for executing people. But God has a way of delivering his people that none of us can imagine. It's always premature to give up and to give in to the pressure of unbelievers. Because God has power they know nothing about. God can even shut the lion's mouth. Even unbelievers witness Daniel's consistency. By his continued servants, Daniel had demonstrated his faithful devotion to God. Moving then on in Daniel 6 to verses 19 through 22. We all probably really know one of the most well-known stories in the Bible. Children listen worldwide, sometimes from missionaries or others, and they come to their parents who tell the story or Sunday school teachers, and they become wide-eyed. What's going to happen? Well, personally, I remember when I told this story to 3 of my grandchildren. This was before the 4th one was born. The story contains some profound theological insights. It teaches that God will honor and protect those who trust him. It also suggests that private devotion time spent with God is just as important as public worship. Finally, it demonstrates that a crisis reveals what kind of faith we really have. Think about Abraham in Genesis 22. The story shows how similarities of the deliverance of Daniel's friends in chapter 3, Meshach and Abednego, with the deliverance of the Jewish people in the book of Esther. Remember, Esther went before the king and declared that she was exposing this Haman's evil deed. Well, in Daniel's case, early the next morning, the king hastened to the lion's den, cried out in anguish for Daniel to respond if he was still alive. To the king's astonishment, he heard Daniel calmly reply that God had sent his angel to shut the lion's mouth because Daniel was innocent before God and the king. We can compare this to in the book of Hebrews 11:33. The king called for Daniel's release and then ordered all of those who had plotted against Daniel, including their families, to be cast to the lions. Whoa. Talk about a revenge. The account of their fate ends on a grisly note. The lions began tearing them apart even before their bodies touched the bottom of the den. The king issued a decree to proclaim throughout the empire, ordering all of his subjects to tremble and fear before Daniel's God. For he was the living, eternal God who had rescued Daniel from the lions. The decree need not be interpreted as an order for the Persian subjects to abandon their gods and worship only Daniel's Lord. For nothing like this happened during the years of the Persian domination of the ancient Near East. It only meant that the people were required to recognize that Daniel's God truly was a God to be reckoned with. In the pagan world that Daniel lived in, such a decree would have created no real problem because there was all kinds of people or gods to worship. But here's the point. The person who trusts in God, obeys his will, is untouchable until God takes him or her. That doesn't mean, of course, that we won't die or have trouble or be injured. It just means that if we are a child of his, we're going to live with him in eternity. So to trust God is to have immeasurable peace. God who delivered Daniel will deliver us. So Daniel's example is to tell us to act faithfully, the title of the video. Thanks for watching. I hope you will like me on Facebook and subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Thanks a lot.